Prince William is expected to receive a warm welcome in New York City this week during his solo trip to the U.S. He will be here today and tomorrow for his second Earthshot Prize Innovation Summit. It's an environmental competition founded by the Prince of Wales in hopes of finding solutions to repair the planet. His two-day trip coincides with Climate Week and the 78th session of the UN General Assembly. It also comes after a recent Gallup poll found Prince William to be most favorable among Republicans and Democrats over other U.S. leaders. He plans to meet with leaders from the UN General Assembly, and he wants to avoid talks about the royal family drama as it pertains to Prince Harry during his trip. We'll see if he can avoid that. Here to talk more about it all, host of the Naughty But Nice podcast, Rob Shuter. Rob, always fun to see you. Thanks for being with us. So this Gallup poll is wild, right? He's more popular than most U.S. politicians. What is it about Harry, or excuse me, that was a Freudian slip, about Prince William that is so likable?
What's likable about him is he really doesn't get down in the mud. I think some people could argue that Harry and Meghan have told family secrets, and as delicious as they are to actually listen to, after a while, I think they become a little tiresome. And so I think William's approach to really looking at the big picture here, he's in this for the long run. He's not in this to be popular today or tomorrow. He's in this for 10 years, 20 years from now when he becomes king. So I think the fact that he doesn't do interviews about his brother, he doesn't talk out about really controversial stuff, that is why he appeals to both Democrats and Republicans, which is a pretty hard thing to do in today's America.
Absolutely. Is he political at all? I mean, he's here to talk about the climate, but some of the things that he stands for, is he considered controversial in that way?
It's very gentle politics. That's where he stands here. I think particularly with young people, climate change is something that's very important to them. So to his generation, he's speaking directly to them. He doesn't get involved with mass shootings. He doesn't get involved with gun control. He doesn't talk about abortion. He picks his topics very, very carefully. I'm not saying that they're not important topics, and they really do mean something to him. But by nature, he's not a controversial type of guy. He's a really decent, solid type of chap.
And many have wondered, especially after his brother's book came out, how it impacted their ongoing relationship. While he's in the U.S., of course, he'll get questions about Harry and Meghan, about his brother. Has he ever responded publicly how he feels?
Not really, and I think that's part of the charm of William. He really is the opposite. He's taking the opposite approach that his brother takes. He doesn't talk about this. He has been requested by every major media outlet, including me in America, for an interview while he's here. He's turned down every single one. We're not going to see him on the morning shows, on the late night shows. There'll be cameras at his events. He'll release a statement, a carefully worded statement, but he doesn't really do these interviews where he talks about members of the royal family. I am hoping, though, he has a packed schedule for the next 48 hours. I do hope we get to see him eating a hot dog in New York or going for a walk in Central Park, doing some of those magical tourist things that will make people love him even more.
And another headline, his wife, Princess Kate, she is now the Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air arm of the military. What more do we know about the Princess of Wales' new role?
What we know is that with Harry and Meghan stepping out of the royal family, stepping back, at least from the working royals, a lot of these titles, a lot of these jobs, a lot of these roles now have to be distributed amongst the working royals. King Charles has made it very clear. He sees the modern royal family as a much smaller nuclear unit. And so there have been some complaints in Britain, some anonymous complaints by people within the family that now there's just about the same amount of work, but less people to do it. So everybody, including William and Kate, are working a little bit harder.
All hands on deck, but welcoming William this week in the U.S. Rob Shuter, always fun to chat. Thank you.
Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.